freak out already. Hello, everyone. I think we're live. I don't always know. This is great. Anyway, here in Montana, at least Western Montana, it's a fabulous sunny evening. And Kelsey is just a few miles away from me. Glenn White, who is our guest tonight. Everybody say hello, Glenn.
Hey.
We love you.
Hey.
To be with us. He's in Salem. And everybody can pray that my camera doesn't freak out, my video go crazy. It did about 4 or 5 times on Thursday night. So anyway, Glenn's got a ministry called Business Tree Prayer Network. Is that correct, Glenn?
Well, it's called Business Concepts, but we're currently doing what we call a Business Tree Prayer Project. So
okay, business.
We do a bunch of.
Can you clue us in on the business tree word? That's a little bit of an interesting word.
Sure. Long history, but basically I've been involved in business for 25, going on almost 30 years. And while I was there actually in Kalispell, which we were just talking about, got filled with the Holy Spirit and started experiencing God's movement and signs and wonders and everything else. And I was either told I should go in the church, or I was told I should keep staying in business and earn a bunch of money so I can send money to the church or to missions. And I was like, but I want to do both. And I don't understand why I can't do both. So that started the journey that we've been on for the last, 20 plus years. And in the midst of that, while I was in Bethel, staff in Redding, I was driving up the freeway in Redding and said, God, I can't say it's business ministry, because then it's kind of like marketplace ministry and it's really different than that. And I can't say it's missions or ministry business. So what do I do? And which I do a lot of, I just jammed them together and called it Business Tree. So it's really doing business, which is also full-time ministry with kingdom potential and hearing God's voice and everything pushed together. So that became Business Tree. And then through the process of training manuals and exercises and classes and international travel, we added the concepts part just because we started actually building things that you could do. So I'd heard theory, and I'd heard and read books encouraging business people, but I'd never found anything that really practically, strategically told you how to do it. So that's what we've been doing for the last 20 plus years. And it's been really, really fun. Trust me.
Wow. That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you even got started into that? Was there a business background that kind of put you in that direction?
No, I was in Kalispell, Montana. I was the VP of Sales and Marketing for Grouse Mountain Lodge and Kandahar Lodge, and we were building additional businesses. 1995, we moved over there. 97, we were in a small group, got hit with the Holy Spirit, and the whole world changed. I've been saved since I was in high school. And we started preaching and praying on top of houses and touching sick and people getting healed and filled with the Holy Spirit. And I wanted to get out and do more ministry, so I tried to leave work. And God said, no, I don't want you to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got all this business stuff and I can't not experience the Holy Spirit. So I'm really frustrated. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And it took about a year. And at the time we were supporting through the business, I was able to write checks to nonprofit ministries out of the business proceeds, because we had an ownership that was in Texas, but I was kind of the number 2 guy, GM. And so through that, we had connected with the prison ministry, Monty Christensen. I don't know if you remember him, but I supported him. Yeah, I got real tight with him. And then literally one day he walked in my office and said, hey, I've been praying for you. And I'm like, that's awesome. And he said, no, I've been praying and God's told me something and I need to talk to you. So we stepped back into my office. And,
one of those conversations.
Yeah, one of those. Okay. And that hair's standing up on the end. And I'm like, what is this all about? I said, okay. And Monty says, hey, I want to he told me to ask you a question. I said, okay. And he said, are you willing to let go of what you know to experiencing something greater that you don't have any idea what it's going to be? And I was like, yeah, if it's from God, yes. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time.
Yeah.
And then literally that just progressed to where, it didn't take long after that, a few months. And I basically just said, I'm done. And I gave my 3 weeks notice with my wife and 3 kids and a house and a dog and a cat and a bunny and everything there in Kalispell, not knowing what I was going to do. I had about a half a dozen people who were pretty close to me come and say, what's wrong? And I said, what do you mean, what's wrong? Isn't this what we're all supposed to do when God shows up and invites you to go do something? And they're like, well, yeah, but no. And do you have a drinking problem, or do you have a marital problem, or do you have something that's going on? And I'm like, no, I've seen God move, but I understand business. I don't know how this is going to work. And then God told me what to do after that. After I made the decision and after I quit, then he says, this is what I want you to do. And he basically said, I want you to consult businesses. I want you to share with them, as I give you revelation, how to integrate God into their business operationally and practically in the Spirit of God. And then I want you to give 50% of your time away to nonprofit organizational development. And we were up there in the Flathead Valley, and I'm like, okay, we're going to starve to death. This is not going to go well at all. And in the first year of Kingdom Consulting, I don't know if Bill, you remember that, but started that, and I made more money in that 1 year than I did the last year as the VP of marketing for the resort company. I said, wow, this is great. And I got involved with YWAM. And then he just started moving forward to do different things. And through YWAM, we got connected and went long-term with YWAM. He told me then a year later to shut down Kingdom Consulting and give all that up, and then go into full-time ministry with YWAM and go raise my own support. Even when we could have paid for most of it, he told me no, that I had to go raise support and be full-time missionary. So that's one of the many, many steps of our journey over the last 20 years. And then he just, quite frankly, Kelsey, he would just put me in situations because I was willing to say yes. One of the lessons we learned is if you say yes before the question comes, then you can't back out when he asks you whatever that's going to be. And then he shows up. So we just had an amazing journey of stuff. But we went from there to YWAM, to Bethel, to Business Street Concepts, to Texas, where I was nonprofit director that we did business with a mission. And we would basically go all over the world doing business organizational development training into third world countries, and then work with local churches. So it was crazy stuff. So,
Wow.
and it hasn't stopped. We're doing that now in Salem. And then my brother and I own our own senior living management company, and we're seeing people get saved and healed and inside of senior living communities and working with employees, and it's cool.
Wow.
So just a little question for you, so that people can hear how God's moving in the midst of this. Can you share with me kind of some of the statistics of what you're seeing relating to the virus in your assisted living homes?
Yeah, it's a real easy number, 0. So we have 0 cases.
People.
Say that again.
How many homes and how many people for 0 cases?
Yeah, we full-time manage 2 senior living communities, both in Idaho. One's a 54 unit with 62 people. The other one's an 84 unit with 97 people that are all probably, I can't guarantee, but well over 70 to 75 years of age, in the midst of areas that are contracting it. And then we have a Long Beach, California community, and one opening in Oxnard. Long Beach is actually occupied, that we asset manage. So we don't directly manage, but we're facilitating management of that entity. And it is totally surrounded by other places that have COVID. We don't have any cases whatsoever. So we've prayed that in and walked the land. And there's some things, I mean, we prepped the ground for where we're going to be available. And again, we don't own those. So it's just basically us bringing the presence in and doing some stuff.
Mm. Wow. Can I go back to when you were talking about saying yes to the Lord and not knowing what's that going to bring? And I have a similar path to that. So that was really intriguing. Can you maybe tell maybe a story about that where you said yes and you're in it and it's like not looking that great? Did you have any of those moments? Like you mentioned when you arrived to, was it Salem? And you guys didn't have a car or a house and you just pulled up in your moving truck.
I think that was Chico.
That was to Chico, to the YWAM base. And really, it really came out of the YWAM situation when we started talking about going to the nations.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Air Force brat, so I had been out a little bit, but it was when I was younger. And it was really a kind of a class commitment. We sat down and said, the question really becomes, how much do you want to see God move? Right? And the limiter is never him, it's always us.
Right.
Right? We don't have a perception or an understanding of what he can do, so we allow that to limit what he can do, because he could do it without us, but he chooses to do it with us and through us, really to bless us.
Mm-hmm.
So as a team, when we were there, experiencing some of the things that we already had in the Flathead Valley of seeing people healed, delivered, and saved, and amazing stuff happen, it was like we were ravenous. It was like, we want more of this. So when you get a group of people then that are coming from different places but still wanting that, we basically decided that amongst ourselves we would make that commitment. And we all wrote it down, that we basically would say yes to whatever God asked us. So it really didn't matter what the question was anymore. It was just the matter of what opportunity now is going to be placed in front of us. And when you already make the decision, right, you just fall back on the decision. Wait a minute, I have to decide to do something. Oh, that's right, I already said yes. So I have to go into what God's given me the opportunity for, and then see what he's going to do. And I cannot express, and it's amazing with Bill being on the phone. I'm the most normal guy, not, super intelligent. I mean, I'm not putting myself down. I'm just saying I'm a regular guy that when God started to give opportunities to, was initially just bold enough and crazy enough to do it. And now it's just like it happens. It can happen every day if I'm aware, I guess is my point. So that's how we got to, I ended up in Iraq twice, and right before all the battle stuff, but it was very tense situations. I remember being in Africa and we were supposed to be at a church, and then we got requested, hey, well, there's a small church plant and it's umpteen miles out. And, there's, in that time, there was 4 or 5 of us. It wasn't a Chico. It was well after that. And the answer is yes. Yep, we'll go. Hey, will you? Yep, we'll go. Hey, we got there. The family was with us. Hey, this is Uganda. Do you want to go into a maximum security prison and preach? Yep, we'll go. And, and then there's the family. And then when I got there, he said, will you let somebody else teach? God asked me, and I said, sure. So it was my 9.5-year-old, 10-year-old daughter. And the place, everybody was bawling. I have pictures of guards with AK-47s with tears coming down their face and people getting healed. And here's this red curly-haired glasses 10-year-old girl in the middle of a maximum security prison, and you could hear a pin drop, and God's as thick as I've ever felt it. So it's just, it's an attitude, I guess, that allows you to see him move anywhere and everywhere. And that was my heart. I loved seeing it in churches, and we had meetings and laying on the floor bawling and, conferences and all these other things. But I was saying, why can't this happen in other areas. And I loved business, and God started to reveal that really that was as much a meeting place, which happens every day with the majority of people that aren't saved. So what if God showed up there on a random basis and you allowed him to? How much more would that mean, right, in an everyday situation? And then for me internationally, as a business guy, we're at 22 or 23 different countries now. I can go anywhere and do anything, and then basically just be available for him to use me. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So when you started this new business tree prayer project,
Yeah.
like how long is that in the making? And yeah, just go ahead and start there.
Yeah, this is kind of phase 2, to be honest with you. When I was in Bethel and Reading and doing the business school, I would take business students, and then I got really connected with the intercessor team that was there, and started taking intercessors, but then training the business students, and we would go out to businesses and we would start to pray and intercede with them. And then when I stepped down from Bethel, that business consulting opened back up again, and the spiritual dimension had to be changed for anything practically, tactically to change. So it's just an element I always brought with me of, hey, I'm going to start praying with you guys, and then do you want some other prayer? And in that cycle of this kind of prayer project, business prayer, we actually ended up hiring full time. I think at one time we had 15 paid intercessors that I then subcontracted out to businesses. And we developed a prayer order system where we kept track of prayers. We had 3 different levels of prayer. So I wrote this whole thing called Business Intercession and used it as a model. We would come on people's properties and do what we call PBAs, or prophetic business assessments, and prophetically walk through the business before or after hours and tell them spiritually what was going on at different places in the building and relational issues and stuff. And we would do worship in the building. So that was kind of phase 1. Really, this kicked off again here in Salem, right at the kind of the beginning of the lockdown, COVID, if you will, about 2 months ago. I was sitting at home, which we normally travel to our communities, the management, senior living communities. I was like, okay, we've got great teams. You don't really need to go. And I'm sitting here in an apartment. We're in a small 1-bedroom apartment right now in Salem. And at about 6:30 in the morning, and I'm not a morning guy, I'm more of a late night person, I hear this loud tapping, whack, 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 whack. And I'm like, what in the world is that? And it's waking me up. And about 2 or 3 mornings in a row, it's like 6:30 in the morning. And I'm like, what is going on? And finally, I got up and looked around. As I stepped outside the front door, there's a big covered patio, and there's these little red woodpecker on a 4x4, and he's tapping on the rain gutter. He's not tapping on the wood, he's tapping on the rain gutter. And it makes this horrendous sound. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I shot a video of it. And as I started to shoot the video, I heard God almost audibly, right, say to me, Glenn, it's time for you to wake up. And it's time for others in the business community to wake up to the opportunity that they have right now during this quote unquote downturn. And we've got several businesses that we've connected with relationally and worked with that, you know, we're just having a terrible time. The business is going down. They're having to shut down. They're losing employees. I'm like, God, what are you talking about? He said, look, I can need you to get up in the morning and you start reading and doing things. And it's got to be God, because nobody else would ask me to get up at 6:30 in the morning, even though that's probably not early for most of you guys. For me, it is. I'd rather stay up till 1 at night praying than anyway. But as I started doing it, he said, look, there's a season and time of opportunity that comes when oppression or pressure comes on you, and is coming now. And I was about ready to start gathering people to start do kind of business breakfast and start talking about some of the business reconcept things. And I was like, oh, that's not going to work because we're shut down and nobody can get together. And this is when God said, wake up, you can still do this. So now reach out. We did it through the local church, which we shot a video and then started putting some things out. He said, I want you to set up your Facebook and all these other pieces. and start a prayer project where you can connect intercessors, again, back to businesses, but during this time frame to see what God wants to do during what others would call a turn down. And I started talking to others saying, well, it's really a restructuring. It's a refocusing. You heard a lot now about rebooting or resetting your expectations, but taking advantage of it, because in business, we often do not have a time where there's really nothing we can do. I mean, nobody did anything wrong. There's an outside force that's constraining you. So it gives you the opportunity to understand and walk through and retool for what's going to come as you come out of it. But to do that, you need to hear the voice of God. So we started the prayer project and started connecting businesses and intercessors through the prayer order and the same things that we had used before.
So I wanted to ask you, Glenn, if people are going like, wow, that sounds like something that would be helpful for my business. I'll ask you again, but can you tell people how they could get in touch with you? What would be the avenue to get more information once done tonight?
We set up a prayer at Businessstry, BUSINESSTRY. Sounds like business try, but it's businessministry.com. And if you're an intercessor that says, wow, I'd love to be praying for people and see people move in business, you can contact there. Or if you're a business, you can send an email to that email address as well. And then we'll basically coordinate that. So it's all about balancing. How many intercessors can we get? And then businesses, and then connecting those. And we shot introductory videos and short little training videos on how to use the prayer orders, the theory of what is behind kind of our business intercession model. We didn't go through all of it because we wanted to kind of jumpstart it. But yeah, they could reach out there. Businessstry.com is our website, which they could contact us through that as well. We've got a businessstry.com Facebook. So all the normal places.
Can you put that on the screen, the businessstry.com one, so people know how it's spelled? But got a follow-up question, Kelsey?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, can you give us maybe a picture of an average day and what that looks like to you, and how that connects with all the different, like the intercessors and the people that you have in the field, and what does that look like?
My day, Kelsey?
Yeah.
Coffee, lots of coffee early. Now that I'm getting up, time in the Word, which is normal for me, but it's been different this season. I don't know how to describe that. And then really it's virtual. I mean, like we're doing now. I mean, I'm either on a Zoom meeting, I'm doing emails to businesses, our businesses and our leadership at the communities that we're at. I'm asking them what their needs are. We're praying for them, as well as the businesses. I've got a list of prayer orders that are for our communities, which there's probably 8 to 12 things on there. So I spend my time praying for those specific items, and we track then testimonies or things that are happening in the communities to know what impact those prayers or where God's moving and going. And then I'll be on a lot of emails. As you can imagine, we're looking at the prayer Businessstry, and we're reading what the intercessors fill out as the prayer order regarding, here's the information or what I'm getting from God. So I help kind of decipher that. Mm-hmm. And then I'm passing that on to the businesses. I email those forward, and then they're responding and emailing me back prayer orders and testimony journal pages. So I'm kind of the communication between those two. And then locally here in Salem, in the last probably 2.5, 3 months, we've got a business, Advantage Heating and Air Conditioning, which came through our church, that went through one of our trainings, that I'm not full-time, that I'm contracted with to go do business organizational development. We call it Kingdom Businessstry Development. So every Thursday I'm with them, and then a couple times during the week, we're normally jumping on a phone call regarding an issue or praise report, or here's a testimony, or again, if it's something urgent, besides the prayer orders they have scheduled, then we're hearing what those needs are. But I meet with them for about 2 hours every week. And we're basically revamping their organization from a business that was initially designed to make money to now a business tree whose sole purpose is to extend the kingdom. And then what does that mean in integrating all of the spiritual attributes that we can inside of that business, and then seeing things happen? And it's blowing up. I mean, they last month during the COVID shutdown with 50%, check that, probably 40% of their crew laid off. They just had their biggest revenue and profit month ever.
Wow.
Okay, in the middle of what should have been constraining, they said 90% of the other companies in their industry in probably I'm going to guess 100 mile radius are operating at 50%. They ordered so much equipment from their vendors that the president of one of the largest West Coast AC companies called them specifically and said, you ordered more product than anybody in your entire region, and we don't understand what's going on. And he got to share what was happening and the things that they're going through to convert and change over. And these guys are Kingdom Christian guys, but now they're basically taking that personal belief and being able to integrate it into their business. I mean, testimonies like crazy. Guy fell off of a ladder that was just under 2 stories, no injury whatsoever, got up and went back to work. We've got guys that are installing systems that are mowing somebody's lawn and then being able to share the gospel. We've got plans to do some really cool, crazy stuff that they're open to now because they're getting revelation from God of really being able to take over a section of the city, and obviously homes that they're invited into because they're given the authority to be in those homes, and then minister through that as well. Amazing group of guys that were doing cool stuff, and now you can just see it accelerate.
Mm-hmm.
So about how many people do you have that are working with you or involved with you, whether it's, is it volunteers locally? Is there volunteers around the country, other countries? Like, what does that kind of look like?
In Business Tree Concepts, Bill, or regarding just the prayer project?
The prayer project, or even if you want to share how the two kind of like link together in what you're doing.
Yeah, the prayer project's really new, like I said. So we've got, I'm basically coordinating and overseeing it. We're adding intercessors and businesses as they come in. Carolyn, my wife, has coordinated that before. I've asked her if it gets too big for me, if she wants to bring it on, and she's considering that. Got another lady that was basically my admin when I was at Bethel, who did a lot of the prayer coordination at the school, and then since is in Oklahoma. So I've got some assets out there that we can pull in, as it grows. I just didn't know, so I figured God would either bring them, and then the prayer and intercession people, as well as the coordinating people. Business Tree Concepts is really just me right now.
Just hang on one sec, Glenn.
Yep.
So you would welcome intercessors to join your team? What
Absolutely.
Kind of people do you look for?
Well, anybody that's really had, and formal is a really bad word to me. I don't really like it. Some basic prayer intercession training. And even if they haven't, but they're interested, then we have our prayer and intercession training for businesses that we would walk them through or get that materials from them. My heart would be that this would continue to expand and grow, where we would have to bring coordinators in different areas. And again, see what we did before, but basically let it multiply freely by just using the framework of the business intercession model that we have. So absolutely, if you're prayer intercessor involved, you find yourself again, right, locked at the house because you can't get out. That was the other thing that Lord told me is there's people that would love to pray for things that have more time on their hands now. But again, the local church, they have their prayer chain, but they really don't have anything other than that to strategically see a cause and effect relationship to. they're more than welcome to hit that businesstree.com or prayer@businesstree.com and say, hey, I'm an intercessor. I've been in YWAM. I've been in Christ for the Nations. I went to Bethel. I went to, there's tons of places that have taught a strong foundation of basic prayer. And we just layer that over our training stuff. And then, yeah, we'd love to connect them as this grows.
Great.
That's awesome. And then do they have teams that they would join? And do you take all ages, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, all ages. There's no, what do they used to say at Bethel Camp? There's no junior Holy Spirit. That's what they used to say. So, yeah.
They still say that.
They still say that, do they? Okay. Yeah, so, yeah, age doesn't really matter. What we've developed is a framework that's pretty simple and easy. There are people that are gifted in what I call prophetic prayer. So there's a place for them, right? Which means we don't give them a lot of information. We just say, here's the business. You go get into the third heaven and see what God says and tell us whatever that is. There's informed intercession when people really like to focus in on something. And then we give those the prayer orders from the businesses, and they kind of, dive in and get really specific on a subject matter. And then we basically coordinate that information back. We like to have at least 2 intercessors to every business. We can have more. As we reach out to businesses, there are some that say, well, I know 2 or 3 people that would gladly pray for me, but I just never thought about actually organizing or giving a structure to it. They pray for me because they know me from family or friends or from church, but I never thought about actually sending them information and expecting them to pray and then get coordination back. So that's another avenue of intercessors that we've seen, which I expect to continue as businesses get involved. They're like, well, can you have somebody that I know pray for me? I'm like, sure we can. But they're going to go through the same kind of program and get the information and be through the coordination of it. So that's an option as well.
Gotcha. And so what about as far as of businesses? Like, let's say a business owner, like, wow, I'd like to have somebody praying. Sounds like they've got something all put together where I can just either have their intercessors pray for me or give the names of mine, and they can figure this out instead of me having to figure it out.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yep. Yeah, we'd love to facilitate that again. And the goal long term would be, right, if they get that coordination and the intercessors have the model, my heart is that they take that on and they start working directly with the business, which is, again, what we did, years ago. It's like, okay, well, I've got the system now and I can communicate directly with the intercessors through the prayer orders so they can take on that mechanism and work forward from there.
Right.
I don't know I've been praying into this saying, God, how big and fast is this going to get? I said yes, Kelsey. So now it's up to him how he wants to do it, using the tools that he gave me through the process. So I don't know. At one time I had a vision of not only prayer and intercession, but worship and a meeting space. And it was called the Business Tree Concepts Core. And it was a physical building, which may now be changing into something that would be online, where businesses could do their, quarterly or annual planning and have a place of worship that they could go to 24/7 as a group. And then they would meet in a meeting room, and they would have prayer and intercessors praying for them as well. And they'd have resources and then coaches, Business Tree coaches that had gone through some of our programs or other programs that were available for them to, again, develop this kingdom business mindset and then keep it going and develop all the attributes of a kingdom business in their annual planning. So, and it was, a paid service and a volunteer service, and we did it for nonprofits. And again, it's still there. I drafted it out. And it's still around. So who knows?
Right. Who knows, right? That's a great way to put it. So what qualifies as a business? Do you have like tight guidelines? What if somebody's doing ministry? Is this something that a ministry can do too? Because my guess is, as much as there are business people watching, there's probably a whole lot of people involved in ministry watching, going, saying like,
Yeah.
wow, I'd like to have somebody praying for me on a regular basis. What about me? Can I get in on this?
Yeah. I start with business because that's just where my mind goes. But again, working with tons of nonprofits. I'm working with our local church who's very interested in, because I'm always shocked at ministries or churches specifically, where I kind of start to have this conversation. They kind of look at me, deer in the headlights, like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I don't understand. And again, this is just me, how a faith-based organization, which biblically we're clearly told is on the foundation of Christ and prayer and the movement of the Holy Spirit, doesn't have a strategic, right, recordable, trackable prayer program. I mean, what are you praying for? What is God saying? Are you making decisions based on that? And then what is God saying, right? Prophecy. And what is he doing, testimonial, to fulfill those? And then you get that revelation again, and you're able to share that. And people are tactically, practically involved in seeing him do what he wants to do, but with us and through us. So yeah, organizations of any kind, I mean, profit, nonprofit, civic, that have a core base of wanting to see God move, it's based on prayer. I mean, there's no other way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't say, well, what is your congregation, what is your team praying for this month to see God do? Well, we're praying for, I know souls are going to be saved. That's awesome. But what tactically in your organization to move to the next level so you can really do what God's calling you to do? What are those things? And what is God saying and doing through those? And do you have two or more people, right, in like-mindedness praying to see those move? And you'd be shocked that the most say, no, we don't have that kind of structure or tracking or organization or anything.
Yeah. I think you could highlight most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but we'd love to help them. Again, this isn't a pay-for program. It's something that God said, hey, wake up. That stuff you used to do, we need to pull it out of the box and open it up, because now is a time that, again, God is moving and changing and setting people up for their success, I believe, in the expansion of his kingdom. So,
yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I think that's great. My husband and I, we own our own company as well. And I remember, about 10 years ago, and we were in ministry, and it was kind of a new thing that, you could work, you could have a job, but to say that, no, my business is actually my ministry, and actually have your whole business seen as that, like the different mountains of influence, and not just running it as, well, this is a Christian company, but actually seeing it as a ministry in itself as well, like a working part of the body.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? That I always go back, Ephesians 4, because being in the church is really frustrated because they're way overworked and way overloaded. And if you've been in a church in a ministry, you're like, I'm supposed to do everything. And the expectation is, oh, well, you guys are going to go save the world.
Uh-huh.
Right? And Ephesians 4, the church, right, is really to equip the saints to go do the work of the ministry. Well, where are they supposed to do it? Not in the church, because you can't have everybody in the church being all ministers. It's only 1/7 of the 7 mountains, right? So there's all these other areas that you're supposed to be doing it at,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then the business people, and this is what started it for me, Kelsey, is on the fact of the only time I really get called is when they need money or they want some expertise on a building program or a funding program. And I was okay with that because I thought, as a Christian business guy with the Bible on my desk and looking for opportunities to speak to people, that was my role, right? I was supposed to generate so that I could give. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it's so shallow of what you can actually experience.
Right.
And that was the draw that pulled me in. I said, I love business and I always want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I found out through speaking with God, he said, "What is your business for?" And I said, "Well, most businesses are to make money." He said, "That's great. The problem is your businesses are serving mammon just as like a non-Christian business is serving mammon. You're just going to use it for a better cause when you get it. But really, is that the level of involvement you want to have?" And I said, I bawled. I was like, absolutely not. So, well, what if I would move through you and every facet of your business? I would give you the vision, mission, core values, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and you'd do all the same stuff. But what happened is that all came from God and me to begin with, and we pulled the spirit out of it. What if you let me teach you how to put that back in and be involved, and then see me work and move through it, and the testimony to the kingdom that would come out of that, and then everything else. And the thing that blows me away with all the stuff that we've done is it generates business as a outcome of seeking God in the kingdom. It's bizarre. But again, we've never practically, tactically put it together.
Yeah.
We do strategy sessions, right? Which everybody needs to have a strategy and a plan for their business, what they're going to do. But then we do sporadities. We do spirit-led strategic planning sessions where we basically have God show up and the Spirit comes and he will totally rewrite your business plan. And then you can marry with him and he'll show you day to day what to do, objectives, goals, tasks, all this other stuff. And it's amazing.
That's one of your other favorite words that you use, Glenn. Could you talk a little bit more about where sporadities came from and what exactly that means? That was pretty quick. I don't think anybody actually grabbed a hold of that and was able to chew on it. It just kind of like came in, whew, off it went.
I make stuff up. Sporadities, right? So I'm sitting in businesses. I'm going. They need and understand basic business strategy, right? I have a vision. I have mission. I have core values. I have quarterlies. I have annual reports. I have business goals. So all this stuff is great, right? But I'm like, but it's so all our own brains, right? We're trying to tackle all this stuff here. And those purposes are to manipulate and develop so I can maximize revenue and profits. Like when there's something, but in the kingdom, it's totally different. The kingdom is, how do I maximize God's exposure and how the Spirit's going to move so I can represent Christ in every opportunity and expand the kingdom. And if I seek the kingdom first, then all these other things are going to be added, right? So I'm like, okay, well then we have to re-spirit, right, all these components, because they all came from God originally anyway. We didn't come up with any of this stuff. It was all revelation. We moved it into this human mindset and we left the Spirit out. So we started talking about strategies and developing strategies. And I kept saying, again, I can't use strategies because every business guy or even organizations slide into this mental thought of, okay, yeah, we're going to figure out our annual budget and everything else and figure out the strategy to get that accomplished. So I said, God, you've got to help me. I don't have the words. I don't really understand it, but I can feel it. And he said, well, what if the Spirit came and he was able to speak over and above the man strategy? And I'm like, well, your ways are not our ways, and you want to the steps lay before a man, but God directs me. And he said, yeah. I said, well, that would be crazy. I said, how would that happen? He says, well, what if you gave room and actually walked organizations through having the Spirit show up and then actually speak to them about what they put down.
The word, are you, Glenn?
Yeah. It's crazy. He actually wants to, and he loves it. The funny
even in business, God's looking for relationship. How about that, right?
Okay. There's a total definition I have now of business than when I started. So I said, well, we're going to spirit strategize? And he said, yeah. I said, well, what? I don't even know what that looked like. He said, well, let me show you. So well, what do you want me to do? Be quiet. Okay. Put on some worship. How do I get connected with the Spirit? Well, for me personally, it's worship. I mean, worship gets me there, right? So I'm like, okay, well, he said, well, how do you get into the Spirit? And I said, well, worship. He says, okay, we'll turn on some worship music. So I turn on some worship music, and I'm like, okay, now what? He says, anything I say, anything you see, any scripture you get, anything that now you know is coming from me because your brain is empty because you've got all this information already out on the table, I want you to write it down. I said, okay. And stuff just starts coming. And you write all these pieces down. And then out of that, he gives you his kingdom perspective of your business or organization, the strategy you've put together, because some of that is revelation from him, but a lot of it is us then manipulating these pieces so we can control it and go do it. And he says, let me show you what I want to do spiritually. And if you'll walk in the spirit with my strategy, not only do you get more revelation, then my spirit will come and it'll actually work on your behalf. See, he wants to be intimately involved in everything that we do, not because we are going to get somewhere, but because the journey is what he's all about. So I started calling it Strategies, and then there were 4 segments of it that we developed, and we teach it and go through it with churches and organizations and businesses, and it's a blast.
And just in case anybody didn't pick up on it, because they might not have, Strategies is the combination of spirit and strategies, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So we call it Strategies, which is spirit-directed strategy for your business or organization.
All right.
And it's got 4 components: discover, design, develop, and deliver. And then it's a process that you keep going through over and over.
Like a business administrative type kind of guy.
What can I tell you?
I know, man. I miss you. Right?
Well, I did. It's funny. I'm having flashbacks, right? Because it was years ago. You were there. I don't know if you were there or not, but we did a business tree. It wasn't business tree at that time. It was a Christian or a business conference in Flathead Valley. This was years ago when I was still in Bethel. It was awesome.
That was my idea to invite you, Glenn.
When? Then or now?
Then.
Well, yeah. Oh, that's right, because you had come back from...
Because we'd come back from Bethel.
That's right.
Right. And I knew you were down there doing the business school, and I was like, you know what? We got to have Glenn come up and...
That was fun.
Us.
Yeah.
Right?
That was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you foresee traveling around and doing different conferences ever like that again?
I would love it.
Yeah.
I would love it.
Yeah. I think it would be great.
I think I'm in this season, honestly, with what we're developing. Some of the things we're able to do because I own the business now. I think that was one of those steps. You know, with my brother coming home, there's a lot of assignments that were kind of wrapped up in us being here. But with the church that's Bethel affiliate here, we're starting to shoot some video, and they have a online school they're going to do, which allows me to have that. But yeah, I could do this 24/7. I mean, as Bill knows, I can talk anybody's ear off, but I get super passionate. And I remember at the conference that we did do years ago there, again, I actually brought my daughters, and they stood up at the beginning of the meeting, 9, 10 at that point, 7, 8, I can't remember what their ages were. But we opened the business conferences with them, picking people out of the audience that they had been praying for 2 weeks before and prophesying to them. And it just, everybody's there for a business conference and like, what's going on? And the reason is because we have to get our own mental business psyche kind of out of the way so that we can hear and receive God and then process forward. And we did business baptisms. Do you remember that, when we baptized the businesses and prophesied over all of them? And yeah, I loved it.
That part of it.
And then the prophetic word about the Flathead Valley with the angels that were all wrapped up inside the trees.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you're bringing memories back, Glenn. That's right.
It's seeds,
That's
man.
super refreshing, right? Okay.
Right.
You
Bring
should
it back.
share that because I haven't heard about that. I want to hear it.
Which one?
The angel wings.
We were at the conference, and I was speaking, and one night I stayed up late, which is normally what I do. And we were speaking about angels and how they have assignment over individuals, but they also, because of the 7 spheres, I believe that there's angels that are designed for each one of those 7 spheres to operate in as well, because if God knows that there's 7 spheres and there's spiritual powers and principalities, then he's got more than that to overcome them. So we were talking about at the conference and talking about my personal angel and angels I've seen and different applications of that internationally. And then we started talking about business and how that works. And in the conversation, God started speaking, and he gave me this open vision over the Flathead Valley. And as well, there's two parts of it. I won't go into all of it, but the angel part was that there are really in every society, but it was really kicked off at Bethel, because I've seen this multiple times in other parts of the world now, that there are angels that have been dormant for sometimes hundreds of thousands of years that were in and for business, and I believe they're probably for other spheres too, that because the people that were there didn't understand that God wanted to interact and utilize the spirit and all of the kingdom dimensions in and through business, they didn't have anything to do. So they literally curled themselves up, excuse me, and I saw them in the pine trees around the valley. And as we started as a group praying into releasing these angels, they actually stood up and they were taller than pine trees. And as they opened their wings, like they were encrusted in like spider webs or something. But as we started praying and asking them to move on our behalf and start kingdom businesses and see that movement in the Flathead Valley there, they stood up and then their wings started to open and all this stuff cracked off of them. And they were now coming out of being dormant and were being available for assignment if people would pray into the things that God gave them revelation for as they converted from a business for money for a business for the kingdom into the businessry. And then we closed that conference by another crazy thing that I don't know if anybody's ever done, but I said yes again. We actually had them bring all of their organizational papers, like their LLC paper, their documents for their company, and we put them in, remember this, Bill? We put them in a Ziploc bag, and there was a couple pastors that were there that were leading, and we had them basically baptize their businesses, meaning I had established something, right, for the purposes of making money in order to support myself, Christian again, but now I've got a new revelation. This isn't about me. It's about me and the business dying to itself and being brought back to life for the purpose of expanding the kingdom. And as individuals, we get baptized to make a public proclamation of our change in accepting Jesus, receiving the Holy Spirit, and being part of the kingdom family. And that's our calling. So we had these business guys and ladies do the same thing. And we baptized, put them in water, brought them back out, prayed over them. And if I remember right, I think we got a prophetic word for every single one of the businesses that were there. And again, it was connected to they have now this heavenly asset in the angelic realm that's now available for them to use and move forward, which still exists there as well as other places. And that's happened a few times around the world. So
yeah. So what would you say to people who are in different countries right now where they don't really have that opportunity to just, take part in something like this? What are some things that they can start to do to make that shift into being more of a kingdom business or,
There's three things that I tell anybody, actually, that I ask them to do, and is, for lack of a better term, a proof to me to see whether people are actually interested in making a transition. One is you can change the atmosphere of anywhere you are through worship. So in a business or organizational, even if it's not non-Christian, if it's non-Christian, as you as an individual, is 24/7 praise and worship at your office place. If one person, let alone the whole office, will do that and turn it on, I have not seen in 20 plus years where there isn't a drastic change in the atmosphere of which that is done.
Wow.
So any business that I start to work with.
Like one person, you are the worshiper, and throughout the day you will be worshiping, or do you kind of take it in shifts, like, hey, so-and-so, you're for an hour, and then you switch, and is that it?
Do it that way? I mean, I'm lazy, I guess. So when God brought it to me, I just turned on, at that time, a CD player. You guys don't know what those are anymore, but a CD player, and put it on loop, right? And I just let it play. all day long. I change it over. And then when I went home in my office, I let it run and it just looped and it would play 24/7. Now you can do, right, tons of different things. But the idea is, right, that he inhabits the praises of his people. And the more I thought about that, I'm like, what does that mean? It means that when we start to worship, he connects and he is physically and spiritually in that atmosphere, right? So if he inhabits our prayers, that means if I'm praying and worshiping, that he's there. If he's there, then anything that opposes the kingdom has to go away. It's not an option. It's not a battle. It's not a fight. It's not anything else. They know demonic powers, oppression, they know who he is, and they understand his power probably better than we ultimately do. So when that presence comes, everything else has to move. Okay? And by 24/7, in a matter of days, things feel different. People act different. Things sound different. Now, different can mean everything gets a lot better, but often individuals, they get worse. They cannot stand this atmosphere of the glory of God that's there by his inhabitants, and they'll start to manifest, right? Good will manifest, but so will the opposite. And then you start working with business or organizational people. Okay, that individual, 9 times out of 10, they're saying, that's the person I have the most problems with. They disrupt everybody. There's all these issues. It's a spiritual issue, right? And some people, oh, I'm going to fire them. No, you're not. That's your primary ministry field. I mean, you've just discovered whom the Lord has put in your kingdom business to bring the kingdom to. Right? So now you start working through other elements to connect with those individuals, not to evangelize.
Right.
Okay? Because that doesn't work. Evangelism works, Bill. I'm just saying in the concept of...
In the context.
Yeah, in the context of, whoa, right? We then need to minister to them, and ministry, right, outside of the church means service. So I start serving them.
Mm-hmm.
And it totally blows things away. So worship is 1. 2 is prayer, right? What does that look like? If you're an owner, manager of a business and you want God to show up and you've started worshiping, then how about we take 15 minutes, you come to work 15 minutes before the shift, and you spend 15 minutes, right, asking and praying God for him to move today inside your business, to give you opportunities to hear him, which is prophetic, and or to see him, which is testimony. Open my eyes to hear you and see you in this business realm, which now I'm committing to you in the kingdom. And if you spend 15 minutes a day, it's the part we call in the intercession model, intimate intercession. There is nobody that can relinquish the prayer and intercession from somebody that started or owns or operates, right, their business. It was the vision given to you by God. You were inspired to do it out of your heart. You, therefore, are responsible for being the first line of prayer. Then we add levels to that in our prayer model. But if a business owner, manager isn't willing to turn on worship 24/7, see that change, and then start spending 15 to 30 minutes before work on their business, not asking for money, not asking for business, not asking for new contracts, simply saying, God, I want to see you and hear you inside of this business for giving me and our company an opportunity to serve other people. Then those are the 2. And then the third one, quite frankly, is every month is looking backwards and writing down the testimonies and the prophecies. And we force them, if they're going to work with us, to have a testimony and a prophecy journal. And then once a month, they have to sit down, open up that, and start reading, right, what God is doing and what God is doing. And what happens is the frequency of the testimony and the clarity on the number of prophecies starts to increase. Mm-hmm. And they can actually see and hear God moving and have a document that when those times of up and down, because it's not just, straight up and everything's great, they have this record of what God's been doing and moving and saying inside their business. So those are the three elements and anybody can start that, right? You've got worship, you turn it on. You start praying 15 minutes inside the workplace for him to show up. And then you record and you review on a monthly basis, what has God done and what has God been saying? Those three things will drastically change your work environment and what you're doing it for.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I know there's so many people that will benefit from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll rock your world. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
So I wanted to ask you again. We don't have a set time when we end, Glenn. We just kind of go with the flow, and if there's more to hear and your voice is holding out or whoever's voice is holding out, we can keep sharing or whatever. And sometimes one of us has to drop out. So it's kind of like our Tuesday night meetings that we did, it's just kind of try and follow the Holy Spirit. But if somebody wanted to get one of those prayer orders, can you tell us a little bit about what's in the prayer order and what they could be thinking about or thinking towards, and then also again, how could they get one of those? Well,
prayer@businessstreet.com. They can certainly just email me with that or through the website, which goes to info@businessstreet.com. Either one will work. They're digital, right? So I can send you a Word document by which you can actually type into it, or PDF version, which you can basically make copies and you use it, handwrite it. It's not super high tech because I didn't want it to be. I didn't want it to limit anybody, right, to have a document. Pretty simple. A prayer order for the organization that comes in and out of us. You put the company name, who you are, and that information on it. And then really simply, the owner or the person who's going to do it just writes down the specific area in their business that they want prayer over, right? So I need to increase a certain type of employee, or I'm looking for an employee, maybe one. Maybe that they're expanding their business into a geographic region and they want to understand what God wants them to do. Whatever those items are that they feel a need currently through their prayer and intercession, right? So they've been interceding in that 15 to 30 minutes and God's sharing things with them about their business, right? Those are the things that as God reveals that you ask, okay, God, are these things that I should get strategic prayer on? And he'll tell them, yes, this needs prayer activity on it. So that's what you fill in on the prayer order. Then you send that in, or again, which is totally fine with us, if you have intercessors or people that'll pray with you, you simply give them a copy of that and say, look, these are the 2 or 3 things that now are on the top of our list that we need God to move on or get direction on or whatever the situation is. And they pray into those, okay? And then each one of those intercessors simply starts to write down, just like we're spirit storming, this is what God said, right? You need to pay attention over here, or there's opportunity in this area. Or I'm just, whatever it is, there's no wrong answer. And when there's multiple prayer partners, right, it says that we don't see in parts. So you get these parts from 2 or 3 different people, and you're praying. When you put all that together, it starts to give you some really clear direction in how to move forward. And then you're responding back to them regarding, hey, those things you're praying about, we have this guy because we're looking for a certain skill set in our business, as an example, right? An employee, and we don't know of anybody. This guy walked in and wanted to know if we had an application, and he just happened to have this right heart. And there's a testimony of Jesus bringing a resource needed to increase the capacity of the kingdom company based on the intercession that was given. At that point, you fill out the testimony journal, which you would do for your own business. Hey, look what God did, right? And then you share that back with the intercessors, so it encourages them to go, hey, I was part of something and the movement of the kingdom forward, and my prayers matter. So it's a document. So it's and Bill will tell you, it's not rocket science. It's just a revelation of a simple way to start the process of connecting. That can get super as complex as you want it to be. I mean, I've had visions of online prayer stations that are virtual, that anybody can pray anywhere in the world, and they log in and they get their prayer. And it can go, an hour. I've got all this stuff written down regarding how to build a business intercession or business tree prayer app by which that you could have it on your phone and be praying. And so, but the core of it has always been, and God told me, make it so anybody can use it. We'll always be able to expand it. But if it doesn't work in the simple, roughest format, right? Having been in backwoods Uganda to Fiji to these other places that don't have all this technology, it's not going to make any difference. You've got to be able to have a system that pushes them into an activity where I show up. Anything that we've done in Business Tree Concept is not the answer. It's been a mechanism or a tool that gets us re-engaged with God, which is the answer.
Right. Glenn, I think you should dream bigger. You have such small dreams, man.
Yeah, well.
I don't know why you limit yourself like that. What's going on?
Now it's just about, I've been praying into the people to make it happen. There's so much stuff. We could talk for hours and hours and hours. So.
Oh yeah. Yep. Hey, Luis, has anything Glenn said struck a chord with you? Any comments you wanted to make or questions you wanted to throw out there? Yep.
Yeah,
all these years later.
These were all the same principles, and that was with a ministry based out of Dallas, Texas. It was all organizational development because of the vision, that they had, and they had an actual physical resource of building they were developing in Iraq. Amazing story of a gal who is still ministering over there that we did some development stuff with when I was in Dallas. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Kelsey, you got any last thoughts or remarks or another question that you just got to get in there?
Shoot, I don't. I'm all questioned out.
Okay.
Kelsey, well, just track your business stuff. Do those 3 things, and then I want to hear the impact it's had. Test it. Yeah. Test and see.
Awesome.
How many? I got one. This is probably a really stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So you've been doing this on this business tree adventure for 20 plus years now. How many businesses, rough figure, and we can include ministries, nonprofits, and whatnot in that, would you say you've worked with?
Really?
Yeah. And do you have one more testimony? I'd like to end up with a testimony of how God showed up through what you were doing with these business tree strategy concepts?
I don't know the number, Bill. I'll just be honest with you. I mean, there's ones that we've walked alongside and, consulted and, set hours but then there's so many others of emails and videos or conferences, like how many people, I mean, I count more how many times do I get to do what I love to do, and then hopefully that touches as many people. I lots. I guess that's the answer. Specific businesses. I mean, there's so many. Coming out of Bethel, a really good one, which I always love, is coming out of Bethel. I got to work with a gentleman who had owned and sold a chemical company. He was actually the initial investor for the School of Business. And then basically we stayed in a relationship afterward. He's passed now. But part of the vision I still have, coming out of that is not only helping existing businesses, but starting businesses on this kingdom-based platform, right? Because a lot of people I work are reworking. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize or understand those things. So looking at people that wanted to go into business, but wanted to start and had a concept of the kingdom and the spirit from day one. But they knew that missions was great, but they weren't called into full-time, quote unquote, missions ministry, and they felt they were called to business. So one of the things we did is stepping out of Bethel, is maintain that connection, is go to start businesses. So he funded some startups. And one of the ones I loved was a guy that actually, his wife worked at the church there, and he wanted to start a landscaping business in Redding. And the idea is, well, why do you want to start a landscaping business? He says, well, because I've got this idea. And I said, okay, well, what's your idea? My idea is that I can be doing landscape, which there's a lot that gets done but the reality is each property I get invited onto, my feet get to hit the ground. So that means I can take Cooper. Cooper. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. This was one of the early, that I'm going back a ways. There's other ones, but just
right.
So yeah, I said, okay.
Ones.
Yeah. So he said, well, and he said, so if I'm there, that means I'm given access spiritually to not only the land, but the people and everything else. I said, awesome. So he put together this business plan, and we went through the process of saying, okay, he had all the figures and everything else. I said, that's great. Now you need to understand, and we walked through, okay, spiritually, what's the impact going to be? You need prayer intercessors, all the stuff we've been talking about. How do we keep track, right, of the testimonies? Because if it's a kingdom business, you should be able to track, right, the signs and wonders and healings and him showing up like you would a ministry, right? If he's not there, then you've got a problem. So So we went through all that. And I remember him sharing stories of people getting prayed for and healed and delivered on the site. The one thing he said, though, the one thing we're working at now, which is we don't like to use sprays and pesticides for the weeds on the lawns. I'm like, okay. Said, so what if I could reduce my cost of not having those by starting to pray over the grass and telling the weeds to die, right? I wouldn't have to pay for that. I wouldn't have to take the time to do it. I'm already there. So they started praying over the yards, and they started seeing weeds die and stuff without using chemicals or any of this other stuff. And then they would basically be sharing that as a open door with the property owners, whether that be commercial or residential. And that one, I mean, it was kind of early in the game, but it always stuck with me that somebody would go through and think, well, God can do that. So we're just going to administrate the Spirit of God to that and let that economically as well as spiritually be almost a calling card, to what we do. So that was an early one that was always sticks with me. So.
Well, you challenged me on that one.
I had another one. Here's another favorite one.
I'm going to do that one.
Okay, is a realtor out of Washington that I was working with. We were doing phone conferencing and developing things. And through the process, come to find out that his real heart and love was art. And he had let it go years ago, but he was Seattle area. I don't remember exactly where, but up in that one. And I'm like, okay. I said, so why don't you start using that as part of your expression? And then through the conversation, we got talking, and I'm like, I think God's asking me to ask you something. He said, what's that? He said, would you be willing to paint and then pray over that painting so you knew what house it was supposed to go into that would bless the person that you're going to sell it to? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, just track with me. You just paint something, and then after you paint it, you start praying as you go to look at these houses, these listings, which realtors do all the time. And when you walk into the house, I want you to be aware of and be asking God, is this the house where this painting should go? He's like, this is crazy, dude. I'm like, let's try it. Okay, so he's walking into the house and he calls me out. Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, what? He said, I walked into this house, and as soon as I walked in the house, I looked over the fireplace and my painting was hanging there. Nobody else could see it, but I could see it. I said, what painting? The painting that's in my house. It was hanging over the fireplace. I'm like, okay, so now what? He said, I don't know. What do I do now? I said, okay, well, I need you, right, to be praying then for the person that needs to see that painting, and you need to have a prophetic word for what that painting is. He says, I already know what the prophetic word for the painting is. I said, okay, great, write it down. I want you to write it down and then put it on the back of the painting, right, so it's there, and start praying over it. I said, okay. So he started showing this house. So he ended up selling this house. And when he sold the house, he brought the painting. And he said, this is a gift from me as my mom. And I've been praying for you before I found this house. Told the story of finding the house and seeing the painting. He said, and then this painting is for you. And there's a prophetic word on the back of it. And I cannot recall all the details. But the prophetic word, it was this, I vaguely remember, it was this like landscape, right? And the sun was coming up, and he had this word about, you've been in a dark place, and God's going to give you this home, and this home is going to be where he resides, and your son is coming, and there's going to be growth, because it was all these green and wildflowers and stuff like that. And this is where you're supposed to be. God's reserved this house for you. And this couple just starts bawling, and come to find out they had a terrible, terrible issue before, where they had lost their house and gone through almost bankruptcy and all these other things. And this was their first home purchase since that, which had been years before, and they were changing and transcending. And he had to share the Lord with them and all this other stuff. But he called me and said, dude, I've got 5 paintings right now going, and this is what I'm doing from now on, and doing paintings and stuff. And there's a very good friend of mine who isn't a painter, he's a realtor, but he's got amazing stories of praying into homes, the individuals that are supposed to be there, to the point where he will not quote what he's going to make as a percentage. He says, we're going to find you your house. We're going to walk in and know what it is. He takes them to the house, and he's already know who it's for. And when they show up, and he says, you just pay me what you want to pay me. And he's listed $1 million homes and all kinds of crazy stuff that nobody would list. He's been at meetings, and they walk up and say, hey, I hear you're a realtor. And they go, yes. They said, well, how much do you charge? He said, I don't know. And they said, well, what do you mean you don't know? He says, well, I believe that God will show us who we're supposed to sell the house to. And if you want to sell it, that God will take care of me appropriately. And he's picked up huge commissions on houses that people never even listed because they didn't understand what they were doing, and then had a relationship with the seller as well as the buyer. But the prophetic art thing was like crazy.
Yeah. But, I think that's the kind of thing that we get excited about, and we should get excited about. But part of the reason we get excited about is because we don't hear about it that frequently. And the reality is, that should be normal, everyday Christian business world, right?
Yeah.
That's what we should be seeing, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm super excited for you, Glenn, about what's going on with this. I mean, I think it's really interesting how we connect. Just at the time we connected, as you're starting this. And as we're doing this, what in heaven on earth is God up to,
Yeah.
And here it is. And my thought process was, I don't want to just focus on ministry in the I don't even know, in the church realm. I want to include what's going on in the other realms, right? And so I was in that thought process when
Right.
I happened to see, I don't even know how I saw about your business tree project thing or whatever. And I was like, okay, here we go. And then
Yeah.
the other thing is, then there's another gal. She's going to be on next Sunday. She's in the Portland area. And it was the same thing. And God's like, I mean, he's just awesome, because you have a thought process and you wonder if it's God, and then things start popping up, and you're like, "Oh yeah, this is this is obviously the Lord, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm like super excited for you, because I think that in what you've seen happen before is was really just like the starter fluid, right?
Yeah.
Like the fire never even really got lit. I'm not saying that things didn't happen, but I'm
Right.
just speaking relatively.
Yeah.
Like things that you're going to see happen, the transformations that you're going to see happen, whether it's in a business that comes to you, a ministry that comes to you, somebody from the entertainment field, the scientific, wherever. Because I think people in this time that we're in, God really is, the tables are getting flipped on the enemy.
Exactly right.
The enemy meant this for death and destruction. God's going to use it for life and life more abundantly,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so tables are getting flipped. And one of the things that we're going to see is people have a revelation, or get a hold of the revelation you've had, right? And be like, yeah, I'm all about that. I want to see this going on in what I'm doing. And I need to get in touch with this guy, because we're going to do it.
Yep.
So
No, it's yeah. The biggest thing that has started recently with this whole thing, and I totally agree with you, is, and I've seen it now, this one business that's really engaged at a high level. There is no downturn in the kingdom.
right.
All of these things that we see around us, which they were worried about or whatever, I'm just like, it's not the world you operate on. If you operate in the kingdom, then all these other things are underneath it. This
Right.
dictates what happens in the world, not the reverse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you'll move from your personal belief in God, right, and move away from your practical atheism inside your business, because you believe this for the spiritual element and church and missions and people, but you don't apply it to the reality of your business, then you don't believe God has dominion over that. And if you don't believe that, then guess what? He doesn't, and now you're going to be under the rules of the world. But if you flip that and change and start to say this is a kingdom business for the purpose of expanding the kingdom, all this stuff will be added, and then start implementing some of these basic ideologies and build a philosophy and a culture with worship and everything else. What the enemy intended for evil can't reside here, and his glory does, and that brings love and blessing. And boom, here it comes. It just starts to multiply and multiply. And their view is, it's interesting. They said, what if we could connect you and do this and then be an example to other businesses in the Salem area? I said, imagine 1% of the entire business population of any geographic area operating in the kingdom principle and seeing God move, what impact that would have for all of the spheres of influence in that region and area. I have firmly believed that we will see more people healed, saved, and delivered inside or from the impact of a kingdom business than we ever will from the inside of the four walls of the church, because that's not what the church is for. The church is to equip the saints to go do the work wherever we're called to be, right? And 85% of the population or more is employed in some place of work of business. Doesn't it make sense that that's where God would want to show off and have impact? And then everything else gets, benefited as well. So
Amen. Well,
that's my story. That's my story, Bill. I'm sticking to it.
right. I think you should. I think it's a good story, and I think you should stick to it. So, everyone, I think we're going to wrap up for the evening, morning, afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are, because I know we have people halfway around the world, and I know we have people like Luis that aren't going to watch this till tomorrow when they get up, unless they had a restless night and got up and were like, God wanted them to see us in the middle of the night because he had a good word for them. And so, in closing, I just want to bless everyone watching this, whether you are operating a business, whether you're involved in ministry, whether you're just involved in family life or whatever. There is no, I guess I would say, walls to what you can't be included in, right? This is not just, even though it's businessry, these principles that Glenn's developed, they fit across the board.
Absolutely.
And as he was saying, he welcomes everybody in. He can use this, whatever you're involved in. It still works. It's still powerful. It's still Jesus. And we'll see the kingdom of heaven manifest on earth.
Amen.
Because we're pursuing him and pouring out his love. So God bless y'all. Thanks again, Glenn. Kelsey, we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank
Luis,
you, Glenn.
I'll hear you on Thursday.
Bless you.
All right.
See you.